Hey you guys, I'm going to start a series now of videos all about improving your chess using the checklist. Now this is my latest version of the checklist. We're going to go through this in excruciating detail, don't worry, and I'm going to spend however long, the next week or whatever, however long it takes to go over this and over this and over this. Now, I'll take a sip of my coffee. It's only 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. And I'm just too excited to start making these videos, so I have to get up and do it. So here's the thing about the checklist. The checklist is designed to be a kind of a model of how to select a chess move, right? Ideally how to select a good chess move. And that is really what you need to do. Let's say if you're a beginner, let's define beginner as up to 1000. Okay, for sake of argument, you need to cut out the silly blunders, the one-move blunders. Say, oh no, my queen. Oh no, I got checkmated. Didn't see that fork. Those kinds of things, right? And then probably 1000 to 1500. It's more of a case. I think a lot of games are still going to be decided by blunders. Actually, is the truth of it. When you come up against an opponent who doesn't blunder, I mean, very often it's who blunders first, who blunders worst, who makes the final mistake, really. But then you are getting an intermediate level, or the improving level, let's say. You are getting into the area of needing to make some strategic, positional, decisions to improve your position, and that's part of the checklist, right? And lining things up for an overall better state in the game. And then as you grow on from there, 1500 to 2000, let's say, it's going to be more a case of just make sure the blunders are still eliminated, and you improve on these points. But I really do think it's the same kind of point. So the idea of the checklist is that you need to be working through this stuff consciously, right? Deliberately. You need to slow the hell down in order to do it, until you get to the point where you are doing these things more automatically. Okay, so what we're going to do in this first video is I'm going to take on a bot game, and the reason for that is that there's no time limit whatsoever, and I'm going to show you guys how you can apply the checklist in a real game. So I'm going to pick a bot. I'm going to pick Ali, who's rated 1400. Now currently my rapid rating is like 1430, 1440, something like that. So this should be a relatively fair fight. But what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to go random. I'm going to use the checklist in a painstaking way. And this is what I want you guys to do, right? Use it in this exact way, okay? So before we start, let's just run through the 10-point checklist. So this is the updated version, July 2021. Number 1, is my king safe? Am I absolutely sure my king is safe, right? If you get checkmated, nothing else matters. Okay, so that's always rule number 1. Number 2, why did my opponent make that move? Okay, now this is one of those. I mean, is my king safe is relatively binary. It's like I need to check my king is safe. Is there an immediate checkmate threat? The checkmate threats might become more subtle over time. Why did my opponent make that move? That's one of those questions that you can be one-dimensional, two-dimensional, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to Kasparov. Yeah. Why did my opponent make that move? So what I want you to do is to say, okay, first of all, is my king safe? Yes. Why did my opponent make that move? Do not proceed until you have answered that question for yourself. Okay. Now, sometimes it's going to be, I don't know. I can't see any reason for that move. It might be a stupid move, right? or it might just be I can't think of anything to do, I'm just going to push this. I'm just going to push wood, right? And that sometimes that is the case, and sometimes that maybe you won't come up with an answer for that. But answer that question, even if it is, I don't know, he's probably just pushing wood, right? That's okay. But don't move forward until you've answered that question for yourself, okay? Now, number 3, what just changed? And this is critical. I want you to speak to yourself and tell yourself everything that just changed with your opponent's last move. So, for example, rule 4, what is now on prise? What is now undefended? What is now underdefended? Say everything that's changed. So, for example, when a pawn moves, okay, so, if I were to move pawn e2 to e4, okay, so previously my pawn is guarding these 2 squares, and after I move it to e4, it's guarding these 2 squares, but it's not guarding these 2 squares, right? Let's see if I can put so it's not guarding those 2 anymore, okay, but it is guarding these 2. Okay, so I'll put a target on there, right? So if you want to do this, by the way, I don't know if you have to be part of the beta program on chess.com, but you hold down the E key on your keyboard and click, okay? And then you can do the same to get rid of them. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so what just changed? So what you want to be looking at is things like squares that are less defended or more defended, pieces that are less defended or more defended, new diagonals or new lines that have opened up on the board, things that have become weaker, things that have become stronger, all of that stuff. And tell yourself the full story. With each one move, it shouldn't be too complicated, right? But just make sure that you've told the whole story. Okay. Number 5, are there any immediate risks or opportunities? So, for example, is there a checkmate threat? Do you have a piece under attack? That kind of stuff. Or is there the opportunity to win material from your opponent? Okay, is it a good opportunity? Can you launch a devastating forcing checkmate attack, for example? And if you can, yes, you should do that, even if you're neglecting something else. So, for example, even if you haven't completed development in the opening, you should probably usually grab material if it's available, or launch a killer attack if it's possible. Right? If there is no immediate threat or immediate opportunity that you must deal with, then you should go to your default. And your default in the opening will be to develop your pieces. So in general, you're going to have to move 2 pawns in order to release both of your bishops, because this guy needs one of those 2 pawns to move, this guy needs one of those 2 pawns to move. Okay, so you should develop your knights, usually to these squares, and then normally after your knights come your bishops. So develop all your minor pieces, get your queen off the back rank, get your king castled, right? So that your rooks are connected. And then possibly centralize your rooks, sometimes on the D and E files, okay? But that's like the cherry on the cake. That's development. In the middle game, once you have completed development, your default should be to improve your pieces, improve your position, with the idea of building up to an attack against your opponent's camp at some point, at the appropriate time. Your attack needs to have enough material behind it. You need enough resources behind it in order to be effective. It's very hard to attack with 1 or 2 pieces. Sometimes it is possible. But normally you need to... The reason why you've completed development in the opening and why you improve your pieces in the middle game is so that when your attack comes, it should come with enough sufficient force to do it, to get the job done. I heard Simon Williams, the Ginger GM, use the term premature attaculation as a common chess problem, which I find that funny. So build up to an attack and always be considering the fact that you will usually have pawn breaks. Now, pawn breaks are a way to kind of shake up the game. because it changes, very often fundamentally changes the playing field of the chess game. And then if you are in the end game, which is usually defined by the fact that the queens have come off the board, then your default should be to assure the best outcome. So are you playing for a win? Are you playing for a draw? Okay. So you just want to do whatever you have to do to try and ensure that you get the best outcome in the game. Okay, that's the first 5. Rule number 6, what are all the candidate moves? So once you've established what's changed, what pieces are defended, undefended, all that kind of stuff, you've dealt with, you are aware of any risks or opportunities, or you know what you need to do, then candidate moves. Candidate moves is, well, I could play that, I could play that, I could play that, or I could even play that. Would that work, right? Okay, so identify some candidate moves. Ideally, all of them. Right? Sometimes there's a move that you won't consider because it isn't kind of normal for you. It isn't part of your habit, part of your repertoire kind of thing. But that is very often the edge between you now and you better. When you look at very, very strong chess players playing, they will consider more moves than we consider as beginners or improvers, right? So actually opening up expanding your scope to what moves may be possible or what moves you should consider. And you should certainly never, ever just play the first move that comes into your head, okay? So for each of these candidate moves, you need to figure out for each one what is likely to happen. If I play this move, what's my opponent likely to do? Okay, and then does that create new risks, new opportunities, right? Question 8, which is the best candidate move, do you think? Question 9, does it improve my position or does it improve my opponent's position? And this again is one of those that can go to any kind of level of depth or complexity that you want. But overall, it applies at the beginner level just as much as it does at 2500. Improving your position, improving your future opportunities, preventing your opponent's opportunities, all good, all good. Now you won't be doing much of that early on. It's going to be a lot more kind of 1-2 dimensional, but that's fine. This is what chess is about. So one thing we don't have in here is thinking about preventing your opponent's ideas, but that comes within which is the best move, right? And then finally, absolutely crucial. I mean, this one thing will probably take you to 1,000, right? If you're sub 1,000 now, the sanity check. Just before you take your hand off the piece or your mouse, just make sure it's not a mistake. Okay, just look at the board. So, with that in mind, sip of coffee, and we'll get going against Ali. So I'm going to start by playing e4, and the reason for this is, okay, I'm taking some control of important central squares just in my opponent's half of the board, right? That's one thing. Another thing is, when this pawn moves, this bishop can come out into the board, and so can my queen. Okay, so I'm going to play that move. Okay, Ali's now played pawn to c5, which is the Sicilian defense. Okay, now, is my king safe? Yes, my king is safe right now. There's no checks. The queen could come in here looking at my king, but it's quite safe. This bishop can't come out. The knights are too far away. This bishop can't come out. There's no issue with king safety right now. Why did my opponent make that move? Well, this is the Sicilian. So what white wants to do is to push d4 and control the whole center, right? And control all these squares. Okay, so the purpose of c5 is to prevent white from simply playing d4. Right, so what just changed? Well, this square and this square were defended by the pawn, and now they are no longer defended by that pawn, but they're still defended by other things. Okay, still defended by other pawns. This square and this square are now controlled by this pawn. The queen has a line out into the board, right? And that, I think, is more or less it. Okay. Now, one of the issues with moving the c-pawn is that it doesn't release this bishop, and it doesn't help this bishop to come out into the board either. So that's one of the downsides with the Sicilian, right? Because the pawns that you need to move are B or D to release your dark square bishop, and E or G to release your light square bishop. Okay, and that's the same with your white or black. So I'm not going to just snap make a move. What just changed? We've done that. What's now on prise or under defended? Nothing. Any immediate risks or opportunities? No. If no, go to the default. My default is going to be to develop because we're in the opening. What are all the candidate moves? Well, there's loads here. You could push B3 with the idea of fianchettoing this bishop. Okay. You could push C3. C3 with the idea of preparing D4. Okay. You could bring out your bishop. You could bring out this knight. You could bring out this knight. So for each what is likely to happen, well, at this early on in the game, you don't really know, but I do know what my next move is going to be because I've played this position a lot of times, and currently what I'm playing is knight to f3. And the reason is because it controls these two squares, in addition to the pawn controlling these two squares, right? So it works well with that pawn in partnership. It also removes one of the minor pieces on the king side, which will make it easier to castle at some point in the future. And that's more or less it. So, you know, generally your knights want to come out into the board first. There's a few reasons for this. One is that knights are slow. They can only move that far at a time. So it's going to take them a little while to get close to your opponent's king and be helpful in an attack. Another reason is bringing your knights out here as extra defenders to these pawns. If this knight comes here, it's the same here. The other thing is that bishops can very often actually play a part straight out of the blocks. Right? For example, your opponent pushes a pawn. Sometimes you might have bishop takes pawn. Right? So your bishops don't have to move so early. Another reason is that the natural square for your knights, right, at the start of the game, this knight's really only got two moves. And this one's horrible because it's on the side of the board, which means that the knight is only controlling 4 squares out of a maximum 8. Another issue is that this bishop could potentially capture the knight, mess up your pawn structure. So your knights want to be in this central 4x4 square, where they can control the maximum number of squares on the board. So your knights are almost certain to want to come here, so stick them there. Your bishops might have different ideas, right? So there's 4 perfectly valid squares that my bishop could go to now, but that's going to depend in a large part on what my opponent does. So you don't have to commit your bishops so early. Now, so does this improve my position? Yes, and I know it's not a mistake. Okay, now, my opponent has pushed d6. We've only got 2 moves in already, right? My opponent's pushed d6. Why? No. First question, is my king safe? Yes. Okay, why did he push this? Well, one thing is that it releases this bishop into the board. So it might come here. That's a possibility. And I'm not reacting to this, I'm just stating it as a fact. This is the the evidence that's in front of me, right? That's it. So that's one thing. Why did my opponent make that move? Well, this pawn is in a defended position and he's making a pawn chain there. So it's now defended this pawn on c5, which was previously undefended. Okay. What else has changed is that he's also opened up a diagonal towards his king. Right, but let's put my bishop on here. Very easy to block with a knight or with a bishop. There's no pawn that can block now, of course, because the c-pawn has moved. That's one other issue with the Sicilian. Okay, so that's what's changed. Is there anything on prise, undefended, underdefended? No. So you can also do the goldfish method here, where you literally show the defensive relationships, what's defending what. Okay, so here I can see that all the pawns are defended. All the pieces are also defended because the rooks are defending the knights, king, queen are defending the bishops. Everything is actually coordinated, defending itself on my opponent's side, so nothing there. If not, we go to any immediate risks or opportunities, not that I can see. If not, go to my default, which is to develop. So I should be developing now. So I've still got 3 minor pieces to develop. That's where I should be thinking at this point. So, I mean, one thing that I sometimes play here is c3. This is a delayed Alapin variation with the idea of pushing d4 and controlling the center. Okay, that's perfectly valid. It also maybe releases my queen into the board. So let's go ahead and play this. The other candidate moves, just bring your knight out. d4 now, and if pawn takes, knight takes. Standard open Sicilian. I could bring out my bishop. That's also a possibility. All of these are valid moves. Which is the best? Okay, well, let's look. Which is the best? So bishop out here. What would my opponent do? So bishop out there, I'm looking at a vulnerable pawn. That's kind of okay. What can my opponent do if he pushes this? I can just take it because I've got 2 attackers on it. It's only defended by the queen. That looks like a very reasonable move. Knight to c3. Also perfectly reasonable move. I'm adding more control over these squares in the center. I don't know which is the best one. Okay, let's bring out the knight. Let's bring out the knight. Looks like a perfectly good move. Okay. h6. Is my king safe? Yeah. Okay. Why did my opponent make that move? Okay, well, I've got one thought. Because basically what's happened is he's undefended this, right? So he's undefended this square. And he's now defending this square. Right? So this square is now defended only once by that pawn. This square is now defended by this pawn. Right? So I'm thinking the reason he's done that is because he wants to stop my knight from going to that square. That's it. I don't think he's preparing g5. I just think this is a prophylactic move, preventing my knight from coming in. But that I don't think is entirely principled because the threat of my knight coming in there is not great now. Yes, my bishop could come out to here, and there could be then 2 attackers on f7, but my bishop hasn't come out to there yet. And should my bishop come out to there, he could always push a pawn or the bishop or whatever. He's got countermeasures. So you might argue this is a bit slow at the start of the game, but hey, hey. So what's just changed? Okay, well, he's now defending this square, and my knight is taking that square away from my knight. My knight also can't go there or there, but this is okay, because my knight here is kind of, it's my king's knight. Its job is to protect this pawn and pretty much stay there and look after the king's position. Okay, so what's now en prise or undefended or underdefended? Okay, well, with this move, this square is less defended than it was. It was defended twice, now it's only defended once. That's more or less it, really. This pawn is now defended 3 times, whereas previously it was only defended once. Okay, just stating the facts. Any immediate risks or opportunities? Nope. If not, go to the default. Default, we are in the opening. I should be developing. Okay, so, candidate moves. Alright, bishop out here. Pretty obvious. I've got pawn to d3, I've also got pawn to d4. Now, pawn to d3, downside of that is it blocks in this bishop. And I want to castle my king. So I think getting the bishop out first before playing d3 would make sense. I also have d4. d4 challenges this pawn. Then if pawn takes, I've got knight takes or queen takes. Could be interesting. But But I'm thinking, let's get the bishop out. Okay, sanity check. You'll notice I just missed. But I'd already checked that the square was safe, right? Okay, so we have knight to f6. Is my king safe? Yes. Why did my opponent make that move? Well, my opponent is developing. My opponent is attacking this pawn, which also happens to be defended. So that's okay. He's preparing to castle. That's what I think is going on. However, this bishop is not going to get out of the way on the next turn, for sure, because one of these pawns has to move in order for this bishop to be able to move. So he's not going to castle in a hurry. Okay, just stating the facts, telling the story of the board. What just changed? Well, the knight's come out here, which means that the knight is now looking at this square, this square, this square, and this square. All right, just stating the facts. This pawn is now technically under attack, but is also defended. So nothing to worry about there. That's more or less it. The knight was defending this pawn a fourth time, and is no longer. It was defending this pawn as one of three defenders, and now isn't. So this pawn is now defended twice, whereas this pawn is only defended 3 times. Okay. That's it. That's like the story of what's changed. Yeah, there's another piece on this diagonal, for example, you might say to yourself. Okay, so my default is to develop. That is now under attack and defended, so default develop, which means that to get this bishop out, I'm going to have to move my pawn. So candidate moves are, one is castles short, one is d3, one is d4, maybe knight to d5 might be an idea, but this goes against the principle of not, because this, right, no, my idea is to develop, right? I'm in the opening, I should be developing, and that means that moving a piece that I've already developed a second time doesn't actually support that objective. So I'm going to scrap that idea of moving any of my developed pieces on a further time. So I'm thinking d3 or d4 is the way to go. And I'm inclined to play d4. Right? d3 is good, it's solid, it does release this bishop. Okay. However, d4 creates an issue for my opponent. My opponent is going to have to resolve the problem of these two pawns now facing off against each other. So should my opponent take, I know I can recapture with a knight or with a queen. If my opponent doesn't take, there's a risk of I could push d5, for example. So I think this is just slightly more forcing than pushing d3. Before I do this, sanity check, so before I drop the piece, what's likely to happen? Okay, if pawn takes, I can recapture with knight or queen. Queen even looks quite good, but then if I go there, pawn takes and queen takes, and my queen's on here, it'll probably be met with knight c6, attacking the queen, having to move. So I might end up recapturing with a knight. Now, this knight also has a job there to defend on this side. So I don't know. So maybe castles is the way to go. Okay, so you can see now that my opponent has decided to push this pawn. Okay, is my king safe? Totally. Okay, now I have the advantage that my king is castled and my opponent's king is not. Therefore, it benefits me to play in the center now to try and open up any lines I can towards this guy. Right? Now my opponent has just played a fairly aggressive move, pawn to d5. So what just changed? Well, the pawn has moved from here to here. That means that it was defending these two squares and is no longer defending these two squares. That means this pawn is no longer defended. Right? However, I'm not attacking that pawn, so I can't capture it. Right? This pawn has now moved to a different position where it is under attack by my bishop and by my pawn and by my knight, but not by my queen because I still haven't moved the d pawn, right? Now, so that's 3 attackers. 1, 2, 3, okay? Defenders, it's only got 2. So I have more attackers than defenders. Okay. What is now under defended? This pawn is now under defended. Okay, there we go. Put him in orange. This pawn is now under defended. So I'm going to put a target on him, right? The pawn is under defended. I have more attackers than my opponent has defenders. Okay, that means I can capture the pawn, right? Now, so my default right now is to continue development, complete development. However, I have a tactical opportunity here because my opponent has just created an under-defended piece. So we have ideas now. I could push e5, for example, right? Because the pawn is now not protecting this square. It's not guarding this square. So I could do that and force his knight to move, right? But probably more straightforward, capture the pawn. And because of the possibility of capturing, of pushing e5, I'm kind of tempted not to use my e-pawn. It also would double my pawns on the e-file. So I'm thinking bishop takes or knight takes. They're my favoured candidate moves. Knight takes attacks this knight, right? Bishop takes does not. Bishop takes attacks this pawn, which is defended currently only by that bishop. Bishop takes also means that I'm attacking f7, which is not the case with knight takes. So all in all, I'm going to go for knight captures d5. Because it comes with this tension here. Okay, so this is interesting times. Let's start at the beginning. Is my king safe? Yes. Why did my opponent make that move? Well, my opponent is attacking my bishop. My bishop is one of the two defenders of this knight, which has two attackers. So maybe my opponent's thinking, I'm going to retreat my bishop here, then he can push his pawn, and my bishop is trapped, okay? You see? If I retreat there, pawn c4 traps the bishop because I've only got two squares to go at. Now, if I retreat my bishop this way, he's got two attackers on the knight, and it's defended only once by the pawn. Okay, so at first sight, this looks like an issue. It is an issue, something that we have to address. But what I'm doing is I'm getting my Sherlock on, I'm being dispassionate, and I'm just telling the story of the board. Okay, I'm not, for example, freaking out. Okay, so what is now on prise or attacked or undefended? Well, he's attacking my bishop, right? However, this pawn was defended there by bishop. It's moved to a square here where it ain't. This pawn is not defended. It's attacking my bishop, right? But my bishop can actually capture the pawn. And it comes with check. So that's an issue, right? In addition, my piece is under attack. I know my piece is under attack. Now, a beginner will always react to an attack, or will usually react to an attack. However, there are other options here. For example, I have the option of knight takes f6 as a candidate move, right? What's interesting about that is it comes with check. Okay? So, are there any immediate risks or opportunities? Yes. My bishop is under attack, okay? So we're going to scrap the idea of development, unless I can do whatever I want to do now and develop at the same time, which I don't think is possible, okay? So forget the default. So what are all the candidate moves? Well, one is bishop takes pawn, check. Okay, that's candidate move A. Candidate move B, knight takes f6, check. Right? Now what's interesting about these is that both of these moves come with check. And what that means is that my opponent must respond to that move, because my opponent must get out of check on the very next turn. So let's look at move A, which was move A. Can't remember. Well, let's look at bishop takes b5, right? Bishop takes b5, check. My opponent must get out of check, right? Now the king cannot move out of check because he can't go there, and he can't go here because he's still being checked. So that won't work. So what's my opponent going to do? Well, my opponent has a few ways of getting out of check. Let's say the bishop's on here, king's in check. Got knight c6. That's no good. Bishop takes knight, forking the king and the rook. So that's not going to work. It's got bishop d7. That could work. Okay. And then the bishops are facing off. And my bishop would be undefended on b5. Therefore, I'd have to do something. Either trade bishops or move my bishop again. Okay, so that's one thing. He could move this knight to there. He could move this knight to there. Equally. Probably better move would be this knight. However, then if I then take that knight, he can't recapture this knight because it would be pinned. So he'd be pinning his own knight in front of the king. And also blocking off ideas for his queen and the light square bishop as well. Okay, so that is the situation with this idea of bishop takes b5. Check. The other idea, knight takes f6, check. King's in check, cannot move out of check again because the knight's covering actually both of those squares. Therefore, what must happen is either e takes f6 or g takes f6. And either way, it gives black double pawns on the f-file. This move would expose this area of the board, which is where the king is going to want to castle. Notice that the king is very unlikely to castle over here because we've not only had the c5 with the Sicilian, but we've also now had b5, this kind of rash move, attacking with an undefended piece, undefended pawn. So king coming over here, very unlikely. Now, so if this pawn captures, it exposes the king still in the middle of the board. But it does maybe release the bishop. So I would expect him to recapture with the e-pawn. So the question is, now, I've got two decent moves. They both look okay. Question is, which one is the better move? Or which order should I do these moves? So let's say I capture here. He's got to retake with a pawn. So I'll probably take with e-pawn. And then I'll probably just grab that pawn. And then he'll have to block. Nothing wrong with that. If I capture the pawn now, he blocks with the bishop. I can still take the knight. But it comes with tension between the bishops. So I think I'm going to go for knight takes f6. And just sanity check is from this position. Okay, so I'm visualizing what the board's going to look like after this move before I commit. And I can't see a major risk, so let's commit to that move. And as we've said, e takes f6, and I feel like I'm doing all right because now I have bishop takes b5. Okay, so, but let's use the checklist. Okay, this is how you get better and better and better. Is my king safe? Yes, I've castled. Ali hasn't castled. Am I absolutely sure? Yes. Okay. Why did my opponent make that move? It was forced. He had to make one. There were only two legal moves. He was in check, had to get out of check, couldn't move out of check, had to capture the knight. What just changed? This pawn's disappeared, which means that there's now a semi-open file on the e-file pointing towards black's king. My opponent has doubled pawns on the f-file now. Okay. What's now on prise, undefended, underdefended? That's undefended. That is defended by the bishop. Let's do quick. Oh, not you. Quick goldfish. That's defended by that. Queen's defending that. Okay, so that's the only undefended thing on the board. What are all the candidate moves? Well, here's one. I was going to say there's really, it's a no-brainer, but this is this is what makes the difference. Okay, so I've just spotted that I do have bishop to d5. Okay, now the obvious thing would be to grab the pawn. Hey, free stuff. Everyone loves free stuff with check. And then my opponent's going to block with the bishop or the knight. It's certainly not going to block with the queen. And I've gained myself a pawn. Right? Now, bringing my bishop back here that's not very enticing at all, right? However, I also have this move. So consider all your moves. Now, bishop takes f7 check, the best move in chess, in my humble opinion. I want t-shirts made up bishop x f7 plus, right? Let's consider this, actually. Let's consider it, okay? This is the difference. This is what is going to make the difference between you being a 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, you know, as you go on. The more moves that you consider as possibilities, the stronger you will be. Okay, so take there and king takes. My queen actually can't get out into the board right now. So normally the only reason why you'll do this is to prevent the king from castling, which is not imminent anyway. And very often, if you can follow up with some kind of check from the queen, you can win material. There's lots of traps that involve this bishop sacrifice. But right now I can't see anything. I honestly can't see anything. So I don't think that's a move. But let's consider bishop d5. Okay? It's under attack only by the queen, defended by a pawn. Not a problem. Now I'm attacking the rook. How does my opponent prevent me from capturing the rook? Well, there's knight to c6. No good. Bishop takes knight, check, wins the rook anyway. There's bishop b7. No good. Bishop takes bishop, attacks the rook anyway. I think I'm going to win the rook for the sake of a bishop. So if I do this, what's my opponent going to do? What's likely to happen? New risks or opportunities? My opponent is likely to give up the rook because trying to block with the knight or the bishop just loses an additional piece. Or, hang on, bishop there. No, blocking with the knight is no good. It's no good. So, does this improve my position? Doing this? Yeah, I think it does. I'm going to win the exchange, a rook for a bishop, whatever happens, as far as I can see. Okay. Now, if I do this, what am I expecting? I'm expecting my opponent will give up the rook because there's no point trying to block. So, is there a counterattack? No, because he's not got any development. All his pieces are still on the back rank. So I'm going to go ahead and play this move. You see? And he's lost his rook. Now, but because I'm becoming a smarter chess player, I'm not simply going to play the first move that came into my head. You see, I looked at it, but this is how you become better. There may be a trap in all of this. This may be a known thing. Who knows? So, is my king safe? Yes. Am I absolutely sure? Yes. Why did my opponent make that move? Well, this pawn was undefended on this square when it was still there. Okay. Now it's defended by its buddy. Right? My opponent can't prevent the capture of the rook, so he's just making sure that his pawns are safe. That's it. So what else changed? Well, he's attacking this square and this square. He's no longer attacking this square and this square. No biggie. Are there any immediate risks or opportunities? Well, there's an opportunity to win a rook. Nice. Yeah, if no go to default, well, we do have an immediate opportunity, right? And I can't see a major risk from that. All the candidate moves, candidate move A, that's it. I can't see anything else really. No, does it improve my position? Yes. Sanity check. Done. It's a done deal. Alrighty. Alrighty. So you see, I've not done much here, and we're 6 points in front after 9 moves of the game against a 1400 rated bot. Alright? You can do this. All you have to do is use the method. Alright, so we should probably think about speeding up a bit because I think you've got an idea of the process now. Okay. So, is my king safe? Yes. What just changed? Queen moved from here to here. So queen is now looking at these squares. Okay, so that's the major one that's changed because the queen was looking at most of these otherwise. Okay, why did my opponent make that move? I don't know. He's not going to put the queen here to try and win the bishop. He's not going to put the bishop there to try and win the bishop. Or maybe that's the idea. We just trade bishops and queen recaptures. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's all it is. Okay. What's now on prise, undefended, underdefended, in terms of all the defense stuff? Nothing really. My bishop isn't actually under attack. I still have, for example, bishop can come back to d5, which is not a bad idea. If not, go to default. Well, the default is I'm actually still in the opening because I haven't finished developing all my pieces. So, what do we do? Well, according to these rules, there's no immediate threat. I can't, if he moves the knight out, I can just swap off the knight. If he moves bishop there, I can just swap it off the bishop. I'm not worried about losing this piece outright because I think it's going to be able to swap itself off, and I have d5 if needed. But I'm not forced to do that at this point, right? And that's why we say, is it an immediate risk? Well, it isn't. I can't see the immediate risk. Therefore, I don't have to concern myself with this bishop, right? A lot of beginners will run from shadows, okay, which means that you are reacting to something that isn't actually an immediate threat. It's a possible threat. And the cost of that can be development. So, according to my own rules, I should resort to my default, which is to develop. So I need to get this guy out into the board and my queen. Now, got a couple of options. One is fianchetto the bishop on b2. But I don't like that because it's looking straight at these pawns. Okay, it's got no future there. So I'm thinking, let's move the d pawn. I've got to move one of these pawns to release this bishop. How about the d pawn? So d3, okay, is one candidate move, and d4 is my other candidate move. d3 is kind of solid. If this pawn wants to advance, I can capture it. It releases the bishop. Bishop could come out here, could come out here, maybe attacking this pawn, maybe not a bad idea. Okay, so that's d3. Nothing wrong with it. How about d4? d4 is different because it comes with tension between the pawns. Now, I play d4, pawn takes, I can recapture with knight or with queen. And I'm kind of tempted to capture with queen and propose an exchange of queens. So I kind of like that. Let's sanity check it. Does it improve my position? I think it does. Yeah? I'm also threatening this. Okay. All right. So, is my king safe? Yes. Why did my opponent make that move? He wants to get rid of my bishop. Okay, so I know I can trade bishops. That's given. What's now attacked or on prise or whatever? Well, this is the story. What's going on here, right? Nothing else has much changed. This bishop is now looking at an undefended pawn. It has to be said. But the major risk is bishop takes bishop. Now I've got no way to get out of it. Right? The only option would be maybe a counter-attack. The only counter-attack I can see is pawn takes d5, c5, which means the queens are facing off. Right? But let's say I do that. He takes my queen. I have to recapture his queen. He wins my bishop. I've just lost a piece. So from that, no-brainer, I initiate the exchange. Now, very often you don't want to initiate the exchange. Sometimes initiating the exchange is worse for you. Right? Sometimes it's better to allow your opponent to initiate the exchange. Right? That's why we say, which is the best candidate move and does it improve my position? Sometimes doing nothing is better than doing something. Now, here we are, going into move 12. Chapter 12. Is my king safe? Yep. Why did my opponent make that move? Grabbing free material. No brainer. What just changed? Well, the queen's moved from here to here. Now, what else has changed? Queen is now looking at this pawn. That's the pawn that the bishop was looking at. This pawn is undefended. All right? Now, that's basically it. What is now on prise, undefended? Underdefended, this pawn is on prise because the queen is looking at it. It's under attack. It can be captured. Okay, any immediate risks? Well, yes, my pawn. However, is it a risk? Because let's say the queen takes the pawn. Oh no, I'm down a pawn. But look what I can do. Rook to e1. Pinner the queener against the kinger. Right? Wins the queen. So actually, this pawn on e4 is not under threat at all. So I don't have to worry about that. So is there an immediate risk? No, there isn't. So if not, go to your default. What am I in? I'm actually still in the opening. I'm on move. This is move 12. I'm in the opening. And that's it. So I should be developing. The default when you haven't completed development is to complete development. Unless you've got a darn good reason not to. So I'm going to carry on with development, okay? And so what I need to do is get this bishop out. And I can't go there. So I've got 1, 2, 3 candidate moves. Okay, so let's look at this one first. So bishop here. It's looking at this pawn, which is currently defended. This pawn is also under attack, it has to be said, but it's defended twice. Okay, so bishop there. It's alright. Alright move. Bishop here. That actually blocks the option of rook e1. So if I play bishop there, queen could take the pawn for free, potentially. Then I play rook e1, then the queen disappears and my surprise attack is gone. So I don't like this move. So how about this one? It's kind of looking at the knight. Could be hit by g5. In which case I'll probably just drop back here. I kind of like that move. I think that move is the best. Yeah? Comes with an attack, which means that, see, right now the queen is the only defender of that knight. So what this means is that attacking the knight means the queen is actually tied to the defense of the knight. The queen can't move away. If the queen moved there, for example, oh no, my knight, right? Now, my opponent has just played a move, g5. He's playing his moves a lot quicker than I am, because I'm talking to you. Okay, is my king safe? Well, yes, very safe. However, my opponent has just maybe arguably started a bit of a pawn push on the king side, okay, which is where my king is castled. So my king is slightly less safe than it was, maybe before. And why did my opponent make that move? Well, as we said, there's a chance of g5 hitting the bishop. My bishop now considers itself hit. So, is there an immediate risk or opportunity? Yes, there's an immediate risk of pawn takes bishop. We don't want that. Okay, so forget the default. The default would normally be, now we're in the middle game, to improve my pieces and build up to an attack. But I have to deal with this. So forget the default. What are all the candidate moves? All right. Okay, so bishop takes knight is a candidate move. Bishop to here is a candidate move. May result in bishop takes... Oh no, that's not. That's no good. Because it's not actually defended there. Okay, so that's one candidate move. That's no good. So let's put that one. That's no good because queen takes. That's no good because bishop simply takes. That's no good because pawn takes. Staying there is not an option. There are 2, 3, 4, 5, and you can forget about this one because I'm not moving it all the way back to where it just came from. Okay, so I think out of all of these, g3 is interesting because it really solidifies my king. However, before I do that, I need to think, if I play this, what is likely to happen. Now, I need to think about my opponent pushing more pawns and trapping my bishop in there. Now, let's say bishop's here. If he wants to push f5, I can simply grab it with a pawn. So I can eliminate that pawn. But then he's still got 2 more to follow. But if he starts doing that, I can, for example, just go and grab the knight. Which is all right. Or I can just forget all of that. I'm 6 materials up right now. I could just grab the knight. Anyway, if I do that, queen's going to take that, and I'm in a pretty solid position. My opponent has this bit of a dark squared pawn structure going on. Also has now significantly weakened pawns on the king side. So with all that in mind, I'm going to grab the knight. Queen has to recapture. Why did my opponent make that move? Recapturing. Free material. Very obvious. Okay, now, what just changed? Queen's moved from there to there. So the queen is still defending that pawn, which was defended before, is no longer defending that pawn. Let's look at what's defended. That's actually undefended. That's defended twice. Queen's defending that and that. Bishop's defending that. Pawn's defending that. Okay, so there's an undefended piece on here. It was undefended before. That's basically it. What's now on prise or under defended? Well, that is undefended but not under attack. Okay, so any immediate risks? Let's look at the board. Nah. My opponent's got very little material and it's all on the back rank. He's kind of attacking with pawns, but I can't see an immediate issue with that. Okay, so I should go to my default. What is my default? Well, what phase of the game am I in? We're in the middle game, right? I've completed development, I've castled, and the queens are still on the board. Middle game, your default in the middle game is to improve your pieces. Improve your position, build up to an attack. Okay, so candidate moves. E5. Right, if pawn takes, knight takes. Improves my knight, gets it into the center of the board with more attacking opportunities. Okay, so that's one idea. Nothing wrong with that. Rook to E1. Nothing wrong with that. King hasn't castled yet. And so, you know, rook to E1 might then support this idea. Pawn takes, rook takes, check. That could be less pleasant. Okay, so I kind of like that. Let's consider C3. If pawn takes, that's fine as well. So I'm going to go with rook to E1 for sake of speed. All right, so the bishop's come out. Is my king safe? Yes, mate, still safe. Safe as houses, mate. Why did my opponent make that move? Well, there's a couple of things. I think the main reason is he wants to get his king to safety, get prepared to castle. All right, now I'd like to stop that if I can. My rook is in line with the king. This is all good. Any immediate risks or opportunities? Not massively, but one thing you have to notice is the queen and the bishop are now in line. So is black thinking about bishop takes h2? Now, right now, not a problem because knight can capture and he's just burned a piece. But should my knight move, then that is definitely an idea. And we don't want that, do we? So I want to prevent that, okay? So that's part of telling the story of the board. I want to prevent my opponent's desperate attacking idea of bishop takes h2. So, candidate moves, I think now e5. We talked about it on the last turn. It attacks the bishop. So if I play that, what's going to happen, right? Question 7. Well, bishop takes isn't an option because I'll take it with a pawn. So if I did this, probably pawn takes is an option. But then I'll probably take it with the pawn anyway. I'm happy with that. Can't see a problem. I'm going for it. Okay, and I'm going to recapture because I want this video to end at some point. Okay, and now, is my king safe? Yeah! Why did my opponent make that move? Well, if you look, after I capture this, there's the threat of pawn takes bishop with a discovered check. Okay, so my opponent had to get his bishop out of danger and also wants to break the line of the rook. Straightforward. What's changed? Well, the bishop's not attacking this pawn anymore. This pawn is defended twice, attacked only by the queen. No worries. Bishop's now defending this pawn, which it wasn't before. Bishop's still defending this pawn. The bishop's not actually pinned. That's basically it. Okay, now, what is now on prise, undefended, undefended. You can goldfish your way through this. Takes moments. Always a good idea. Never going to hurt. Okay, so everything's kind of protected. Fair enough. On my opponent's side, not an issue. What about my side? Save, 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 save. Yeah, that's undefended, but not under attack or under threat right now. And I have material advantage. So, are there any immediate risks or opportunities? No. Rook's no threat. Queen's no threat, because it's looking straight at this pawn. Has no checks. Is not coordinated with the bishop, because the bishop's just moved out off of the same diagonal. No threat. So, where are we? Middle game. Improve, build an attack, think about pawn breaks. So, what needs to be improved? Okay, so this is where you do a stock check, do a survey of all your bits, and see which bits are strong, which bits are controlling board, which bits are not controlling board. So, right now, my queen seems a little bit sluggish, right? So my queen is currently looking at that and this diagonal, this file, the D file. So I think I'd kind of like to improve my queen. What I would love to do now would be to prevent my opponent from castling, but I don't think that's, I don't think I actually have any way of preventing that should Ali choose to castle on the next turn. So I want to improve my queen. So candidate move C3 is the first one that springs to mind, okay? Because if pawn takes, I've got pawn takes, but it does open up this diagonal, then my queen might come here. That's kind of alright, but it's, I don't know, this seems like a bit half-hearted move. There's nothing else that's actually undefended. So what are the weaknesses of my opponent? Or could I think about bringing out this rook, for example? If pawn takes, like rook takes, that might be an idea. If A3, if he pushes, pawn takes. That looks like a slightly better move to me. Rook takes, my rook's on here. What if he pushes the pawn with a discovered attack by the bishop? Just drop the rook back. So that's an idea. I think A3 is slightly more attractive than C3. The knight doesn't really have options. This rook's already well placed, so it's down to these guys. Or Queen E2, with ideas of pushing this pawn forward. Let's think about that. So Queen E2, black castles, push the pawn. If pawn takes, I've got Queen takes with check. Okay, let's play that move, for the sake of argument. Okay, is my king safe? Yes. Blah, 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 blah. Why did my opponent make that move? He's hitting my knight. Okay, what's just changed? He's hitting my knight. What's now on prise? He's hitting my knight. Any immediate risks? Yes, he's hitting my knight. Okay, therefore forget the default. What are all the candidate moves? Well, initially the idea of getting the knight the hell out of dodge would be one candidate move. So, can't go there. Can't go there because bishop takes. Can't go there because my own pieces are on there. So, I can't go there. So, candidate moves, not that because pawn takes. I've got one candidate move. Or, I do something else. And, for example, allow my knight to be taken, for example. But I can't see anything that really improves my situation, so I'm just going to move my knight to here. I really only had one decent candidate move. Okay, now is my king safe? Well, it's a bit less safe than it was because there's a pawn attacking it. Oh no, deadly pawn. So, what just changed? Well, pawns attacking these. That's something I need to deal with, right? Now, one thing you can think about is, because like a beginner would go, okay, well, I've got two candidate moves. I've got takes or takes. That's it, right? Unless I've got a check. I don't have a decent check. I've got queen there, check, but then queen takes queen, so that's not an option. Now, another option sometimes is like to allow the pawn to take there, and then you simply move your king in front of the pawn and use your opponent's pawn as a human shield, because your opponent cannot capture his own pawn. In this instance, doing nothing is not a great option because you've got pawn takes f2 with check and attacking a rook. which we don't like, but, you know, so think about this. Like, I've got pawn takes g3. Now, currently, he can't recapture that pawn. If I allow him to take, and I recapture with my queen, then we've traded pawns. So I might as well grab his pawn because I win a pawn. Question is, which pawn do I use to capture with? And the benefit of h takes g3 is that I keep these pawns on adjacent files. The weakness is that potentially, it obviously weakens the h file. And my king, that's the side my king is on, right? So I'm just going to make a quick decision and capture with the f pawn. The reason is that weakens the f file, but I have a rook there, I have a queen there, I have a knight there, I have pieces there to defend. Okay, my opponent's done this. Is my king safe? Kinda. But I'm eyeing up this pawn, I'm eyeing up where that queen has just moved to. Why did my opponent make that move? Putting the queen on a diagonal with my king with the idea of a discovered attack. That's the only reason I can think. What's now on prise? Nothing. Really. Undefended, underdefended. This pawn's defended twice. This pawn's defended only by the king. Bishop's defended only by the king. Rook's undefended. Rook's defending that. Okay. Queen's defending this, this, this. So interesting. We've noticed that the rook is undefended and the king's a bit occupied defending those two pieces. The only defender of those two pieces. So, any immediate risks? Yes. That is an immediate risk because it comes with check, could be forcing, but that pawn then isn't attacking anything and is moving to a square where it can be captured. So, how bad is that? Pawn moves, king moves out of the way. On the next turn, I've got two pieces looking at that square. Right? So that's isn't an immediate threat. It's half a threat. Now, so there's no immediate threat. If not, we go to default. So what is the default? We're in the middle game, improving pieces. Which of my pieces are not doing a great job? This guy, who just got kicked back, right, to d2. Now a knight, when your kings are all the way over there, a knight all the way over here doesn't make a lot of sense. So I want to improve this knight. And the immediate candidate move that I see is knight to c4. What do we like about this? What are the pluses and minuses? It attacks the queen and it adds another defender to the pawn. It's also moving towards the king, which is always a good thing. So that's the move I'm going to play. It's a forcing move, it hits the queen, queen moves across. Okay, now, queen's attacking the knight, queen's attacking the pawn, but it's super defended. I'm going to push b3. Okay, and now finally my opponent castles. Alright, so let's reassess. That pawn's undefended. That pawn's defended by the bishop, defended, queen's defending stuff, defending, and the queen's defending that, but the queen is the only defender of that. Okay, so that what's just changed? Well, we've just mapped out the board with the goldfish, so that's kind of okay. Anything on prise under defended? Well, yeah, a couple of things. That's stuff that's not defended much, but I'm not really concerned with that a pawn. It's far too far away. So what I'm thinking is, are there any immediate risks? No. There's no real checks. My knight here blocks this pawn as well, remember. That was another reason for that. So it stops the bishop coming here onto this diagonal to check me. So I'm not too concerned. At some point I might want to move my king onto a light square, but right now it's not really an issue. I'm up in material. Okay? I want to keep on the front foot. I want to attack my opponent. So, no immediate threats. I want to improve my pieces. What are we improving? I like this knight, right? The knight could come into here, d6. Is that really threatening? Maybe not. It also allows this pawn to move, which could mess things up. So I'm going to play rook a to d1. Okay, I'm improving my rook. It's put onto an open file. Rooks like open files. Okay, now my opponent's played this. Why? Well, we just don't know. You see, okay, so part of me's thinking about this idea to pin the bishop and maybe force an exchange of queens. That's one thing. The bishop can't go there, or there. So why it's moved there, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know is the correct response. So I'm thinking h3 is a candidate move. h4 is also a candidate move. That will force the bishop to retreat. If I go there, bishop's under attack, can't go there, just get gobbled up, or there. So the bishop's going to have to come all the way back to here or here. But, does it weaken me? Let's play it. Let's play it, see what happens. But I kind of like that h3 because then it gives me that idea. Okay, anyway. Right. I could put my knight here with the idea of that to support the queen. So I can't put my queen there now because it gets taken by his queen. Knight here undefends this pawn, but then that could be a trap, right? So I've got queen there, check. And if the queen is captured there, let's try that move. I'm going to do this. Hang on. Also, what's changed is rook is looking at bishop. So I have the option of sacking the exchange. Rook takes bishop, rook takes rook. That leaves me up a knight. Right now I'm up a rook. I'm happy being up a rook, so I'm going to play this move. Okay, he's gone for that. Now I've got queen g4 check. Okay. And now I've got queen here, check. This will force an exchange of queens because queen is undefended. Okay. So basically I'm working through a lot of these kind of moves now because I'm relatively experienced. I'm able to do that. Okay, so now bishop's moved here. Why? Again, he's placing his bishop in line with my king. So the threat is push a pawn, check. It's not a great big threat, but I'm just going to move my king to h1 anyway. Okay, I'm still a whole rook up. I have much better pawns than my opponent. And so now I see rook there. Rook's on the 7th rank, generally good thing. Okay, so I'm going to improve. I'm not worried about any of these threats. There's no major threats about it. I'm not worried about this pawn. If it wants to take, I'll recapture. No worries. Okay. So how about this now? Both rooks on the 7th rank, right? We're in the middle game. We're improving. No immediate risks at all. I'm just looking at what my knight can do right now. I think my knight is fine just hanging out where it is. I'm going to play this. So I've now got 2 attackers on this pawn. It's defended only once. Let's take it with check. And I'm attacking the rook. Let's take that with check. Ha! Didn't think that one through, did I? You see what happens as soon as you start rushing your moves, yeah? You can get into trouble. Now, what just changed? King moved from there to there. Why? Well, it's got a fork. It's attacking 2 of my pieces. Oh no. So, what can I do? I've got, for example, knight to there to defend the rook, but that's no good because king takes knight. I can move my knight to there to defend the rook. No good. Bishop takes knight. Okay? So, it looks as though black's going to be able to capture a piece on the next turn, and that is true. However, I do have one possible saving grace, which is rook to c7. I'm now counter-attacking. Okay? So, see, so he could have taken my knight, but then I take his bishop. Now, instead of taking the knight, he's captured with the pawn here. So, is my king safe? Well, for now he's kind of safe. My opponent only has a bishop. Okay, my king's on a light square, so that's fine, right? However, biggest threat is pawn takes one of these, pawn promotes to queen, and I'm done for. Right? King goes here, queen comes here, checkmate, pretty much. King goes there, it's going to be all over. And queen h1 would be mate. So, I need to do something about this pawn. Immediate threat, hold the front page, stop what you're doing, everybody deal with this, right? All the alarms need to go off at this point. Very easy just to go, oh, my plan was so-and-so. I'm going to grab his bishop, it's undefended. Right? And then suddenly you find yourself losing. However, maybe rook takes bishop is an option. Because if pawn takes there, rook takes. Okay? If I take the bishop, pawn takes there, rook to here, then he can defend with the pawn, then I take it. So I'm kind of thinking I can take the bishop. Let's take the bishop. See what he does. Okay, rook to here. If pawn advances, I take. Okay, I win the queen back. Now you can have my knight. That's fine. But I'm up a rook and a pawn. So now we are in the endgame. Okay. What just changed? The king is centralizing himself. Okay, got it. No worries. Now, any immediate opportunities? Hanging pawn. The king could come in here and threaten this pawn, but I can defend it in time. And the king can't go there, 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 there. There's a lot of squares the king can't go to. I'm just going to grab the pawn. It's an immediate opportunity. Okay, and we've seen this, so why did the king go there? Well, it's attacking the pawn. Pawn's undefended. Let's defend it. Let's grab it. Okay, I know I'm in a winning position now. Okay, now I'm going to put my rook here. So now we are in the end game, and in the end game, your default, because there's no immediate threat, clearly, his pawn can't move, so he's now limited to the king wandering alone. Okay, now what you need to do in the end game is ensure the best outcome. I'm in a dominant position. I want to ensure the best outcome. What I'm going to do is I'm going to quarantine the king on this side of the board, right, so that this pawn can dance his way up here and promote. So my rook is going to guard the c-file. That's its only job. Prevent the king from getting through here. You can see the king's just going backwards and forwards like a stunned fly. Just buzzing around, okay? Right, before I do this, is there a stalemate threat? No, I know the king can go here. Okay, so let's make a rook. Keep life simple. Cutting down on stalemate possibilities. Okay, rook to here. So I'm going to go for a ladder mate. Okay, and now I go here. And now I go here. I'm making sure of the win. Rook to here. Does my opponent have a square? Yes, he's got two. Okay, and then checkmate. Right, so I just made sure of the win. Right, that's it. That's the checklist. I know it's been a super long game, super long video, but if you've stuck with it this far, well done. I hope now you can see just how powerful these steps are. All right, I didn't have a moment's worry in that game, and what the checklist made me do. All right, there was a slightly hairy moment towards the end when there was the risk of. I suddenly walked into the fork, right? So this was slightly scary. Okay. And I didn't think this one through. Takes, and I didn't think through to this point. But fortunately, I had a tactical escape and then figuring this out. So, really interesting that just working out that I could capture the bishop. A lot of times, a lot of people would have just taken the pawn. And I nearly did, right? But then I figured it out. So that's what the checklist does. It just makes you figure stuff out. And these are the questions that a grandmaster will be figuring out in their mind. But they aren't doing it kind of verbally or necessarily quite consciously in the way that you and I have to do. They will be doing it more instinctively. And the reason is because they've played tens of thousands of games and they've studied so much and they recognize the patterns and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's the same stuff, right? Improving your position, thinking about all the candidate moves, spotting what's changed on the board. It all just makes sense. And you and I, need to practice doing that deliberately until it becomes automatic. And that's it, okay? So in my next few videos, I'm going to carry on using the checklist and I'm going to show just how powerful it is and why you need to be using this technique. All right, so thank you for sitting through this video. I will paste the checklist itself into the description. Thanks for your attention. I know it's been a very, very long one, and we will see you soon. I hope it works for you. Take care.